All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Excess Exceed. This is Gearface. I'm so happy to be joined once again by D. D, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you very much for having me. It's my pleasure.
Of course, of course. Always a pleasure to talk to you. Today, we are talking about Vincent. Now, D,
Mhm.
you and I have discussed back a few months ago now, we discussed Ramlethal from over in Guilty Gear, and you made a comparison between Ramlethal and I have to assume like Ramlethal's like weird uncle that she only sees at Thanksgiving, like that kind of relationship between these two characters. Um, so we got another character who is big on choosing what to spend here. So I'm excited to learn a little bit more about this kind of paradigm. Also, Remilus, who in this family tree, these two feel like they're related, and Ramlethal
They're like
and
they're probably like half sisters, if I had to
yeah,
guess.
yeah. Fight is like their weird brother, uh, or like Fight and Remilus are like it's like a marriage thing somewhere in there. The family tree for this line of Exceed characters is very weird. Anyway,
Mhm.
couple disclaimers before we get started. As always, number one, we're going to be talking about playing to win on this show. That's not the only way to play Exceed. You can play Exceed for fun. I encourage you to play for fun. If the lines of play we describe are not fun, don't play that way. Play the way that you do find fun. Playing to win with Vincent in particular is going to be a little bit awkward because this is a Red Horizon character who has been rotated out. So if you are interested in using uh, our strategies in a tournament setting, you might be kind of out of luck. Look for a legacy tournament or look for a way to subject your friends to Vincent at your kitchen table. Number two, we're going to be pretty prescriptive about strategy on this show. Exceed's not a solved game. It is not a completely um, it has not. We haven't, despite how it's going to sound, where we say things like always do this and never do that. Uh, and
We
despite
don't
the
know
fact
everything.
we don't know everything, and despite the fact that D does know what he's talking about, we don't know everything. Please develop your own lines of play, and um, don't take what we say for granted. Just take it with a grain of salt, and tell us where we're wrong, please.
Yeah.
Um, all that said, D, please tell me a little bit about Vincent.
Oh, gladly, gladly. What do you already know about Vincent Clearface?
Oh man, in terms of the lore, he's the president. Other than that, I got nothing. Red Horizon lore is a black box to me. I know that he is a spendy character. I know that he's a character who had a very poor reputation in the very early days of Exceed. He was considered a very, very, very weak character. I think that may have changed a little bit over time, partially due to the influence of the person I'm on the call with. Um, and I've looked at his character ability. Other than that, I don't really know very much about him at all.
All right. Well, 1500 years ago,
Okay.
everybody knew the Earth was the center of the universe.
Yes.
500 years ago, everybody knew the Earth was flat.
Yep.
And about 5 years ago, everybody knew that Vincent was the worst character in the game.
Yep. It was orthodoxy. This was just like the stated this was the stated fact of the world.
Everybody knew. There was no question.
Right.
Now I say that he was bottom three, usually regarded bottom one. There was a little contention over exactly where he fell in this tier of completely worthless characters. Um, Also in that tier was Eva, a character who tied it for first place at the second world tournament. Um, but reputation is as it does. Uh, so everybody knew that Vincent was the worst character in the game. Terrible, completely unplayably bad. I also knew this. I was part of everybody. Um, After playing the game for a few years, I I think I don't remember if I was trying to fulfill an organized play quest because there were little bonus objectives that you were supposed to try to fulfill for bonus points, or
Sure.
if it was
Sure.
just I rolled a random character. But I pulled Vincent out, um, and maybe there was a stream request. I don't remember. But I pulled Vincent out and played him and went, wait, what? This works. Like, this character works now. This character didn't work. This character was terrible.
At some
Let's,
point, they must have patched the game. D. They must have done
yeah,
a hot they
like,
must have done a hot fix, and then maybe they buffed something. You know how that is.
Yeah, Vincent got updated while I wasn't looking.
Right.
Um, it's the weirdest thing. Um, so I'll talk. I'll explain more about how that happened and why that happened. And yeah, by the way, we'll come back to these, but in my opinion, this is kind of the lineup where Ramlethal is the easiest, Fight is the next, Remy is on the hard side, and Vincent is the hardest.
Right.
These are the expenditure characters.
Yeah, these characters all have sort of a commonality in the way that their character ability works. It's going to influence some stuff.
Yep. All right. Now, I'm going to ask you another question. I know I'm supposed to be the one being interviewed, but I'm going to describe a situation and ask if you've ever experienced this.
Okay.
A strike is right. You're playing Exceed. A strike is happening. You find that your opponent is faster than you. Right? They either win the tie or they have a higher speed. They hit you, and their damage exceeded your guard, and you were stunned.
Yep.
That's it. Has that ever happened to you?
I mean, obviously, I've never played Exceed. However, if I had played Exceed at some point in my life, which I can't say on camera or on microphone, I can say that that would have happened to me. Yes.
All right. So, given that we think that that could at some point have happened, and then you didn't get to do your attack because you got stunned.
Yep.
Maybe you'd be a little bit sad about that, but it's just part of the game. It is part of the game that you can opt out of, though. You don't have to interact with that. You can just say that's actually not going to be a problem because I decided to play Vincent.
Okay.
As Vincent, you have an ability that says when you set your attack. Excuse me, that's actually super important. It's not as an action. But when choosing cards for a strike, this is bad templating. It is supposed to be when you set your attack, which is what the modern templating would be. But you may spend up to 3 force for +2 guard per force spent. So you could, if you pay 3 force, give yourself +6 guard, which means you're not getting stunned.
And for a basis of comparison, Sweep is a pretty reliable card. And
Mhm.
when it fails to connect, it's generally not because it got stunned. It's because of some other thing that caused it to whiff.
Mhm.
And there's a whole lot of the conversations that you and I have had on this show, and a whole lot of conversations that I and other experts have had on the show, have had to do with what exactly beats a 6 guard attack. So this is one of the gold standards of of safety and Exceed is a 6 guard
Yep.
attack. Um, Vincent
Yep.
can
And in
have that
particular,
on demand. It
it,
sounds like.
and things that have that typically are slow, so that you're not thinking about speed. You're just saying like, okay, can I hit 7 power at probably any speed, like any speed
Right.
higher than 2, because sweep
Right.
is so slow.
Right.
You're speed agnostic here. You can have a 6 guard assault at speed 5 and say, okay, your 7 power attack that could have stunned me is only speed 3 or speed 4. I'll just be faster than that, so I'll beat that, and then I'll have 6 guards, so I don't get stunned by whatever other thing.
Right.
Anything faster than me. Like I'll be faster than what's slower, and I'll guard through anything faster.
So I mean
Um,
the other kind of like the guard speed threshold breakpoint that comes up a lot in these conversations tends to be like 4 and 4, where like a
mhm,
donkey kick or something that has 4 speed and 4 guard is like it's not sweep, but it's safe enough. I can make that
mhm.
too. I could spend up to 3 force. I could spend 2 force and give something 4 guard.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep. You can reach 4 guard very easily, and that's a super common breakpoint. You can reach 6 guard if you want to be probably unstunnable by anything that probably matters most of the time. There's an asterisk there.
Right.
Because maybe your opponent is soul, and then you have to go, okay, well, I guess I need 7, maybe 9 guard. That's okay, I can do that. Just play sweep and add 2, and there you got 10 guard. Not a
Right.
problem. You're Vincent. Um, so you have this like really awesome ability, which looks numerically bad in a different way. Like I'm explaining why it's good, because if you look at it at face value, you also can go, oh, I'm paying up to 3 force, and I'm still dealing the same damage, and I'm still taking the same damage.
Right.
My delta, so called, hasn't changed. No power, no armor.
Right.
Also, my speed hasn't changed, so I'm not going to be able to outspeed an opponent. I'm just going to try to hit them back. And maybe I would hope that I just play focus or sweep anyway, and I don't need to cover something. So this ability is not something that you are expecting to get value of if you're not thinking very carefully about how to use it. I think you have done an Anji lesson, right?
Yes, I have.
Yeah. Interest, right? I did Anji in this lineup because Anji has properties that make him, I think, not part of this family tree. Maybe he's a weird cousin, but he can spend 1 force which is different from up to 3, and he can get +2 instead of 2, 4, 6.
Right.
Uh, so Vincent can sculpt his guard value to be able to deal with any, mostly any power value of anything faster than him. He also has some other properties that are very answer-like. He has a special that can break focus, requiring no advanced commitment. This is a speed 5 button that lets you hit for 9
Yeah, that is on a special.
on a special.
That's actually pretty crazy.
Yep.
Okay.
This is you just play it, and then you go, okay, did I hit? Cool. How much force do I need to spend?
Yeah, how much do I need to hit for?
Yeah, your opponent played block, you go, cool, spend 0.
You're not stunning anyway.
Like that my attack isn't wasted. I hit, I got a gauge, that's blocked down, fine and good. My opponent played sweep or focus, okay, it's gonna be expensive, but they're gonna be sad. Because you can guard crush.
Right.
9, in fact, means you can cover EX sweep, which is not a use case that most people even think about covering. They go, okay,
Yeah.
well, if it's EX sweep, it's EX sweep.
Yeah,
I'm just gonna eat it.
That doesn't come up particularly often, even in the 80 plus lessons that I've done. How to stun EX sweep is not something that we talk about very frequently.
Yep. You just accept that if they committed both sweeps, or if they committed some EX resource and a sweep, sure, they got what they paid for. Like, they got to play a card that wasn't going to get stunned by anything in the world, except
Right.
Vincent.
Yeah, so Vincent can make himself effectively immune to stunning if he wants to. He can stun whatever he wants if he wants to.
Mhm.
The if he wants to is sort of underpinned by this idea that he needs to afford it.
Yep.
So
All right.
as we're talking about this ability, it is going to have to be contingent on economic concerns.
You're absolutely right. I want to tell you one more cool thing that Vincent does, and then talk about the hanging question, which you have correctly identified. Because the next thing is, what if you had the most punishing cross counter in Exceed? So a
Okay.
cross counter is a special that is designed to beat cross. That means that generally it hits from ranges 2 to 5. There are some variations: 1 to 4s, 1 to 5s, 2 to 4. But the ideal cross counter is range 2 to 5 and has at least 4 guard, so it can cover EX cross. The typical shape is 2 to 5 with 3 guard, and then it hits for at least 4. May have some additional rider that's good for you. In this case, the rider is, you basically, I'm going to exaggerate a little bit. You win the game.
Yeah, that's not even an or effect. Name 2 cards your opponent must discard all copies of those cards. So it's a super parry, and then
Mm-hmm.
you reveal their hand.
It's 2 super parries at once, and you see their hands. So in a pinch, you just go, all right. If I haven't seen any ultras, name both ultras. If I've seen an ultra, name the other ultra and focus.
Right.
And this can go This can be anything from, like, okay, they discarded an ultra, and you got to see their hand, to they discard 3 ultras and concede.
Right. Yeah.
Like,
Because there go
the
their
amount of
payouts.
value they just lost is insane.
Right. And I mean, in the metagame of Red Horizon in particular, the land and time of the Big Dumb Ultra, that is an obviously crushing loss. But nobody in all of Exceed is going to be happy to lose 3 ultras and a focus.
Correct. Nobody's going to be happy to give you 2 shots at picking the most valuable card in their hands and getting rid of it.
Right.
Different characters care different amounts about the information reveal, where, okay, now you know something. Are they vulnerable to reading? Are they a character that has easy ways, or relatively easy ways, to just throw cards away for value? Like Gremlins, for example. Or are they somebody who is trying to play a more controlling style? Or are they somebody who really doesn't want you to know their hand because they're trying to make you play around everything?
Right.
That part can vary. And of course, the raw resource value can vary. Maybe you name 2 ultras and you get nothing. That is actually bad, if you get no discards. But the bright side is that now they don't have those ultras. At least at this moment. And then I should mention here, by the way, there's a thing about parry. This is actually like the reason that a different design was sought in Season 6, as I understand it. Like, the reason there isn't a parry is because parry has a weakness as a thing that is designed. Like, from a game design perspective, there's a problem with parry.
Okay.
It it's a little too free, a little too safe. It doesn't really have a downside because the downside of parry of I got to see your hand is pretty good.
Sure. I mean that's
Um,
good. That's good to the point that people have debated. I've seen these conversations happen where sometimes you would intentionally whiff a parry, and
mhm,
whether that is actually a smart play or not. At the very least, it is a play that is represented in a debate. Like it is something that people
mhm.
sometimes want to do for your
Yep,
loss case on a parry. That is a strong loss case.
yep. Yeah, I mean, it's fairly common even at high levels of play in my experience, maybe even I should say especially at high levels of play in my experience. It's fairly common to go, "All right, I want to see their hands. I'm gonna play parry, and it will take me a minute to figure out what I can name that would be higher value for them to discard than the information that I want to see.
Right.
I'll think of something pretty consistently. But like seeing the hand can be very, very good, especially depending on when exactly in the game you are, how many cards are left in their deck, how much information has already been given away about various things.
Right.
Like
It's
that's a
like
potent effect.
it's like on the tier list of parry outcomes. It's like get rid of their best card at number one, get rid of their second best card at number two, reveal their hand at number three, and then maybe get rid of their third best card at number four. Like it's somewhere in that vicinity. It seems like.
That's a good way to put it. That's a good way to put it. Yeah, and of course the exact valuation will vary based on the situation, but that's true of
Sure.
most things.
I
Uh,
can't help but notice that this is not a either or either.
right? Yeah, you it is. You hope for you get the discard and the reveal. You are guaranteed the reveal though.
Right.
The reason you hope for the discard is just because it's high. It's strictly higher value that way. You know, it is just better to also make them discard stuff and see the hand. But you're seeing the hand no matter what. You're guaranteed that.
Okay.
Um, that much is nice. But yeah, so in talking about these, I want to mention that the part of I think there's a misperception I've encountered before. I don't know if it's as common these days as it used to be, but is that okay? I parried something, I failed, and then they did a whole change cards, and now that parry was worthless. It
Mm.
wasn't worthless.
You made him change cards, sure.
You made them change cards, and that's that much more information available to you. You now know those things are in their discard pile. They weren't before.
Right.
Like you have more information about what's in their hands. If they did a change cards of one or two because they know that you have reading in your deck, so you're trying to get rid of normals, then they did a very inefficient change cards, and it wasn't turn wise. It didn't cost you all that much. If they do a more efficient change cards where they ditch 5 or 6 cards, cool. They have given you more information. It's not the information here's what's in my hand, but it's the information here's what's not, and that still is providing you a statistical advantage in determining what's in their hand from the rest of their deck.
The counterplay to parry also gives you hand information, just probabilistic hand information, not definite hand information.
Right,
Okay.
right, and yeah, I want like keep that in mind, because that is part of like this is guaranteed to get you some form of value. Um, that is to say, if it lands.
Right.
Here, of course, we have the problem of the stat line. It is 2 to 4. It does have 4 power, so it cannot trade cross. There's a missing number right about here.
Yeah,
Um,
it's a green one.
yeah, it's supposed to be here, and instead it appears to be over here.
Right. So I can
Uh,
subsidize that green number. I can haul that in from somewhere else and import the green number, but I don't have it on the card.
correct.
Okay.
When previously I did a lesson on Natali, I described one of her cards as kind of a gauge special, like an early force special that's not force but gauge.
Right.
Well, here's a force special, right?
Sure.
You don't pay on reveal, you pay in advance because you're Vincent.
Okay.
And it's usually a 2 force special, not one,
Yeah,
because
because
two guard does not do much of anything.
yeah, even against Cross not a notably strong card. And honestly, like among the exceed normals, the weakest things you have are 3 power. In many
Yep,
matchups, spending a single force is not going to do anything to your unguarded cards.
correct.
Okay.
Yeah, if you're spending one, you're doing it because you already have some armor guard and you're pushing over. So
Right.
it's like, okay, EX assault at range 1, throw an extra force so I don't lose to grasp.
Right.
Um, things like that. Or like my opponent played an EX, I could just play a sweep with +2 guard instead of having to play my own EX sweep because now I have an 8 guard sweep, which is gonna guard through whatever.
Yeah. It is
Uh,
incredibly unlikely for that to get stunned outside of like an ignore guard effect. So
mhm.
and you mentioned this earlier that this is not an action. This is something that you can do. It's when you set your cards. That means that you can do it on defense. Um,
Yes.
are you typically spending on defense? Is this the kind of thing where,
Yes.
like Anji, you have a defensive mix-up in play that your opponent sort of has to respect?
Yes.
Okay.
So the way I play Vincent, right? So this is about my Vincent play style, and my Vincent play style is very much about answering what my opponent does, right? So in my view, what this ability says, uh, not what it exactly says, but what it tries to say, what this and my kit say, is what if I can answer any question my opponent asks? Um, what if I can go, okay, I need to cover X, Y, and Z, and I'll play this and cover all of them. Um, right. So that is most effectively done if my opponent has made their commitment first. Because if I commit first, they have the information about what I've committed, and now they are the ones who get to go, oh, well, you committed this. I'm just not
Right.
anything.
And
Right.
you only spent one force, therefore you are playing something that has guard
That has
already
guard
on
on it.
it, or
Yeah.
you're trying to mix me up. Like the Yomi layers are still there, but you are ceding information to your opponent.
Yeah.
Um, and also, as you also said, this does not let you hit any speed break points. It doesn't let you hit any harder. It seems like what you are doing when you are spending for your character ability is committing to trading.
Hmm.
So
That is correct.
one of the big advantages of initiating in Exceed is that it ups your potential ability to win cleanly.
Hmm.
Those two things seem like they're kind of at odds. So it makes
And
sense to
they are.
me if I'm getting it correct. It makes sense to me that Vincent would be spending mostly on defense because you want to. If you're using your ability,
If
it's
you're
because you're
initiating, you should
trying to
be
trade.
winning.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the reason that you spend when you're initiating is because you need the coverage. You're like, okay, I am like I have a sequence of attacks in mind. I'm gonna assault, make sure I'm covered against this fast projectile, this DP or whatever.
Right.
Um, or you're just trying to kill them because their life is low enough, and you're like, all right, well, I need the guard, but that's all I need. Let's go.
Okay. So
Um,
when we pulled out those three characters in Vincent's family tree, we pulled out Remulus, Fight, and Ramlethal. All
mhm.
of them have some ability to turn ambiguous trading situations or losses into wins. Vincent,
Yes,
it seems like he has the ability to turn losses into trades.
exactly.
Okay.
Well put.
Okay,
Well
I
put.
gotcha.
Yep. Yeah. They want to go. Okay, I have options that are reasonable. Let me make an option that's dominant. And Vincent goes, I don't have reasonable options. Let me make one.
Right.
Um,
Okay.
and that will be even more apparent going through the kit in detail because although I've shown you some of my favorite things, um, he also has some questionable things in the grand tradition of Red Horizon.
Red Horizon, of course.
Um,
And even one of the favorite things that you showed me requires essentially your character ability expenditure on it
yeah,
to even be
able
useful.
to it. Yep. Which notably means that this is not going to be a oops, I wild swung my cross counter into cross. Because you can't afford to be spinning regularly on a wild swing, right? So you may sometimes, but you can't assume that this will beat cross from the top of your deck, which means that it's generally a hard read. It's generally a commitment. You go,
Right.
okay, I believe this is cross. I'm going to play into it. And that's the thing I think Vincent does very well, and it's what I like about him. So you go, oh, if I know what my opponent's playing, I can just play a thing that beats it. Neat. Um, and he can sculpt those things. All right. Well, I said before I got into the kit, I was going to talk about the hanging question, um, which is how do you afford it? If you can answer any question your opponent asks by being able to afford this ability, how do you afford it? This is the other reason that you use your ability mostly on defense. Your turns are depressingly committed to drawing cards.
Ah, okay.
Um, as noted fan of the prepare action, which I'm not,
Yep.
um, you're going to need to be preparing. You're going to need to be changing cards occasionally, but like changing cards is not all that force efficient. It is mostly a way to manipulate options. You are primarily expected to actually spend time preparing. You need to build a hand because then you go, okay, I spend enough resources that even though my opponent got to set the terms of the engagement, I still got to trade, maybe even trade up. Um, and now I prepare and we do it again.
Okay. So and
Um,
and given your sort of disdain or antipathy for the prepare action, I have to assume that if you personally D are getting enjoyment out of playing Vincent, uh, doing things on your opponent's turn must be pretty fun.
oh yeah, oh yeah.
Okay.
Well, absolutely. I mean, if I didn't make it explicit before, that's essentially my favorite thing, is to be able to read my opponent's mind, determine what they're playing, and then play the thing that beats
And
it.
play the counter.
Right?
Okay. So
And I drive the most enjoyment when I play something that makes no sense against anything else,
right. All
which
right.
Vincent excels at doing.
It's the hard call out, the hard read sort of play.
Yeah,
Okay, so you are willing to, even you, a noted, as you said, fan of the prepare action, are willing to sacrifice interesting game actions on your turn in order to live this fantasy that Vincent embodies.
exactly.
Okay,
Exactly. I'm willing to say, like, because here's the flip side of prepare being boring, right? Which is not the reason not undervalue. The reason I devalue prepare, the reason I think prepare is not generally a very good action, is not because it's boring. Um, the upside of it being boring is that it's fast. You don't spend 5 minutes taking a prepare action. You might have spent the last 5 minutes deciding to take it.
oh, okay.
It's resolved very quickly, turns over.
Oh,
That's nice.
not fast in terms of tempo. It's
No,
fast in
literal
terms
time.
of I take the prepare action, I draw two cards, here it's your turn.
Yeah. It doesn't
Okay,
bog down gameplay.
I
It's just
get you.
literally fast.
I get you. All right. So your opponent
Yeah.
will be playing a lot of the game as Vincent then. When you are
Oh
playing
yeah.
Vincent, your opponent will be taking a lot of turns.
Well, but you will be taking a lot of, like, yes, they will get to play a lot of their game too, which is equally concerning, and I'll come back to that in a moment.
Right.
But you will be playing a lot of the game in the span between your opponent setting a card and you setting a card.
Sure. Okay. So
That's you have a surprising amount of gameplay in that moment where they strike and you go, all right, now. What do I think that is, and what am I going to do about it?
and how much am I going to spend? You actually have a lot of decisions to make, and like what to respond with and exceed is a decision point for every character. But
Hmm.
Vincent has like that decision 3 layers deep.
Yeah, yeah. Like there are some characters I play who are so hell bent on going, I am going to rush you down. I'm going to force you back on your heels. I'm going to have offensive tempo and momentum, and you won't get to catch your breath. And oh, you struck into me. I'll just lose the strike. It's fine.
It's fine,
Like they,
right?
they just they're just like, all right, you can hit me on your turn. I'll hit you on my turn. And they try to get the opponent to not have enough turns to win before they get to kill them.
Right.
That's the living rush down lifestyle. And Vincent is the opposite of that.
Right. He's
Right?
always
Vincent is
catching
like,
his breath.
yeah, it's like, hey, you do whatever you want. When you do, I'll beat it.
Okay.
Um, which is a lovely fantasy. And among my favorites. Um, and oh, by the way, he does have an exceed mode.
Yeah.
This is something that I actually don't tend to use, but it is a 3 gauge exceed mode that upgrades the ability by 1 point of armor.
Okay.
If you are in fact trading, if you get it relatively early and you're expecting to use it, this is where what I've now started to think of as the Anji principle applies, where it's like, well, if I'm using my ability a bunch and there's a lot of game left, well, having more armor means that I'm getting more value out of it for the rest of the game. So it's probably a decent idea. I don't use it for a couple of reasons. One being, 3 gauge is a lot. It is at least 3 force. It is even more importantly than that, 3 gauge. I'll explain why that's even more important later. And I'm paying an opportunity cost of having access to ultras and having access to force that's not in my hands, by giving it up. There's also a specific non-bow that I really, really hate running into, where his exceed mode makes one of his attacks worse.
Oh, okay.
Uh, yeah.
So,
Well, might as well mention that now, actually. Here's National Guard.
ah,
Notably, National Guard does not come with guard. You have to give it guard. And it closes for each point of damage you've taken.
if you're taking less damage, you don't
You're
close as
closing
far.
less.
Okay.
Yep. So
Okay. I
this is a
get you.
cross counter at range 1 because it closes 3 from range 1. You put 4 guard on it, and you're like, all right, cool. I'm hitting for 6. I'm trading up against the world because I'm not stunned by cross or grasp or assault. And I hit first against sweep. You do this, and you can pay 1 force, and now you cover grasp, but you don't cover cross.
Right. Okay. So
That annoys me, so I don't tend to do this.
okay. Of the cards that we have talked about, I can see that there would be some use for Crimson Barrage here, because this would let you, your exceed mode would let you catch cross with 1 force spent instead of 2.
Right.
Not the armor in particular. It would work just as well as if it was 3 guard instead of 2 guard.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, like this is nice for your Crimson Barrage, for your assaults, and for, like, it is also a slightly expensive way to do it, but it is also a way to just say, okay, I'm going faster, but I'm not stunning them. Let me have armor.
Right.
Like you can play a 3 armor grasp if you want to.
Right. Okay. So armor typically outside of outside of situations like National Guard or situations like your opponent having a ton of ignore armor effects or something, armor is usually just better guard.
Hmm.
So it, it's not that this ability is not an upgrade. It's that it is not an upgrade that is usually worth it to you relative to what else you could do with your gauge.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, I got you. Um,
Yep.
if you, I've noticed this with I occasionally play Anji, and I have a similar conundrum. When I have exceeded with Anji, I feel more pressured to use my ability to. It's like a sunk cost fallacy thing to make up the
Right, right.
opportunity I spent. So like Anji's exceed mode feel is even more expensive than is printed because it
Hmm.
means I have to use my ability more. With Vincent, are you is that a concern at all with Vincent, or are you so strapped for cards that you are using your ability incredibly sparingly anyway?
Well, if you have made the decision to exceed, you're expecting to be using your ability several times for the rest of the game. Um, like enough that you're getting enough that there was a reason to exceed, right? Which means
Sure.
that you were not completely strapped for resources. If you were completely strapped, you were probably going to hold on to that gauge because that is a bank of force that's not in your hands.
Here's at least three fourths,
Um,
of course. Yeah.
right. But if you exceed with resources, then you're going to be able to spend at least a few relatively often. And this is one of those things where, like, okay, I have a little armor a lot of the time. As long as you can maintain the resources to do that, like every strike, then you'll be able to fit in a little bit of extra value regularly enough to justify it, at least
Right.
numerically.
Right.
Right.
Okay.
One force for one armor is not a very good ratio. But if you aren't going to run out of cards, then you can make up a life delta gradually. You can bring the totals closer, or you can make the totals go farther away, depending on who was in the lead.
Okay. Sure. And so I take it from the fact that you don't typically exceed as Vincent that the scenario where you have enough resources to make that happen is kind of unlikely anyway.
In my experience, or if I do have those resources, I would rather do other things anyway.
Okay.
Because for me at least, right, I described what is exciting about Vincent to me, which is you can beat anything your opponent plays as long as you can afford it. That didn't change when I exceeded. Nothing has
True.
really improved that. I
Right.
didn't need
Yeah.
more than 6 guard. I didn't need more armor in all likelihood.
It and
Um,
it has in some ways eased up the economic constraints on any given use of your ability, but not really because it cost you 3 gauge to get there, and it's there's economic considerations there too. But the actual fantasy has not changed. It is not really been made enhanced. It's not really been made better for you
it,
by
it
exceeding.
hasn't been made better, and I would say that it my ability to do it has actually gotten very slightly worse because besides the initial economic cost, making one answer worse still matters.
Right.
Like
Okay.
my answers are going to be stretched thin. I have enough. I have just enough. Um, so I feel it when I lose one answer.
So most of the time, I'm going to want to be playing this Vincent. Then it seems like if I'm playing your line of play.
That would be my assertion.
Okay.
If you have no National Guards left, if you have a surplus of resources, if you're out of ultras, these are all factors where they make your exceed mode a little more appealing. Like, and as they stack up, and you go, well, I have no ultras and no National Guard. My exceed mode doesn't really have a downside, and I need to spend this gauge on something.
Right.
Um,
And it could be even then it could just be forced for your ability. Like even then it's a
yeah, it
decision.
could.
It's
Yeah,
not totally free when it's in that situation because it seems like a low priority for you.
yeah,
Okay.
and that would be my assertion.
That's good.
Um, I've seen folks have it be clutch, right? Where you run the numbers and you go, okay, I need to exceed so that I have just enough armor to tank what my opponent throws at me, so I can kill them on the response. Um, but I'll let you figure out with your own math when the time is right for that. It is not something I'm generally planning on doing.
Makes sense to me.
Yep. All right.
Shall we get
So
into the kit itself?
almost. I want to mention. I want to come back to explicitly stating what I don't like about the prayer action. It's not that it's boring. It's not. It's not that it's fast. That's actually, like I said, kind of the counterpart to it being boring. It makes up for it. What I don't. The reason I repeatedly and accurately value the prayer action relatively low, even though it is an action you have to take a non-trivial amount of the time, is because it doesn't change anything about the board state or the game state, and it gives your opponent the turn.
Right.
It says whatever situation we were in, now it's your turn to do something about it. And so if I'm ahead, right, then I if I'm winning right now, whatever the board state is, whatever that means, I'm a grappler with my opponent cornered. Then preparing for me is saying I'm winning, and I'm going to convert that into cards. I'm going to draw some cards in return for letting you decide what happens on the board, and now you probably escape the corner or push me back or whatever. If I'm losing, then preparing is conceding the next strike. It's saying I'm losing, and I need cards so that I win this strike after the next one. So I'll just let you have this, and you sit back and draw cards, and those are both legitimate. The time that I think prepare is the worst is when you're dead even. You're both struggling for an advantage. You're up by less than one turn of value, where you move or play one boost, and now you're winning neutral. That's when I think prepare is the worst. So I don't think it should be viewed as a default action by anybody. But nonetheless, it's an action you have to take some time. It's an action Vincent has to take a lot of the time, far more than I would like. But that's the fact of the matter is that you need cards, and you don't have good ways to get them. So yeah, we'll start going through the kit, and I'll start with the draw effects, the 2 draw effects that he does have at 2.5. Are we good?
Yeah, absolutely.
Great. All right. So one is on this boost, this boost here, which is not a joke, but though it might read like one. The idea, of course, is that you play this as your last card in hands.
Right.
And now you have 4 cards in hands. And if you had prepared, you would only have 3.
It is marginally better than the prepare action.
It is better than prepare action if it's literally your last card in hands.
And all you're doing is giving up a card that you specifically highlighted as being a particularly strong thing that Vincent has.
Yep.
Okay, that seems rough. D.
Yep. Now, if you are at 0 cards, 0 other cards. If Crimson Barrage is the only card in your hand and you have nothing else, there's a good chance you should in fact boost this.
Right.
That probably does matter. And if your other Crimson Barrage is in your discard pile, you'll be reshuffling soon, I'm sure. If it's not, then maybe you'll draw it or it'll be in your deck. But especially if it's not in your if the second copy is still in your deck, like sure, boost the first one, it's fine. Landing this card twice is not necessary. Landing this card twice is comically good if it happens, but you should not expect it to happen. It's hard enough to land it once.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, 1 speed is not exactly an all-star in terms of confirm.
Yep.
But so I will be using National Debt in dire circumstances, it seems like. In every other case, it's going to be Crimson Barrage.
Yep, that would be my assertion. And this card can be force. I'm probably going to say that about most of your cards because you're Vincent.
Right.
You have high force costs, or rather, you have a high total force cost throughout the game relative to other characters. All right. So discipline yourself to only look at the boost of this card. We'll come back to the attack.
All right, let me just cover up a lot of my screen here. Draw until you have 5 cards in hand. All right.
That is a 2 force ultra boost.
2 force ultra boost. That's 4 force. That's a change cards action, D.
Hey, look, it's 1 more efficient than the each of them is 1 more efficient than not doing that. And as
long as you are at very low hand size.
Yes, which a 2 force cost means that you could have 3 cards in hand, and this is one of them. You pay the cost with the other 2, and it works out to be like technically better.
Marginally better.
Yep. And for reasons that I'll cover in a minute, no, that's like one of the worst plays you could possibly make as Vincent. It's horrifically bad.
Okay.
Yeah.
I imagine it has something to do with what is on the upper 75% of this card.
It might have something to do with that, yes.
Okay.
All right, and here's the half boost. It does draw a single card. It's also got Ignore Guard on it. So to say this boost is free is like kind of an understatement, right? That this is a boost that you play, replaces itself, end of turn, and now you have Ignore Guard, which is horrifying.
Yeah, that is. There are not there's a couple of now strike boosts I can think of that have Ignore Guard on them. I'm not sure I've ever seen an Ignore Guard pass turn boost in Exceed before.
If memory serves, this is the one.
Wow.
At least I can't think of another one. I can also think of the Now Strike versions, which are also more expensive.
Right.
Um, but yeah, no, this is a interesting way to command neutral, where you go, all right, what if my on curve could just win and you couldn't possibly stop it?
Right.
Um,
Okay.
er, yeah. Now that boost, of course, would pair very well with speed. So if you had an extra source of speed, for example, that would be really useful. Here's another boost. We're now out of the draws, by the way. We're going through the kit.
Right. Okay.
Uh,
Yeah.
close
Wow.
2 and +2 speed.
Whoa. That's that's a ridiculous boost.
That is correct. It's
That's
light, which is not a special boost that most people get, and also
right.
it closes 2 spaces.
So that's like if like it's already force efficient movement, even if we ignore this big +2 speed. But also, this is again in the context of Red Horizon and sort of early Exceed, +2 speed has the reputation of the all right, I'm winning neutral. That is what that boost
Hmm.
says a lot of the time. Having
Hmm.
two of those is awesome. Having a +2 speed that closes you too is awesome. That's ridiculous.
It absolutely is. Now there's a caveat here, right? Like, okay, close 2 can be awkward on speed because you want to threaten your mid speeds. If only we had a range 1 mid speed that like beat focus.
Yep.
Now we're on course.
Yep.
Um, which we've already talked about this attack. It you only commit as much as you need to, because 1 for 1 is not like super good. For like with armor, one for 1 is not efficient. Maybe it's acceptable depending on what you're doing. Uh, Power is better than armor usually because power will let you stun, which is the point of this card.
Sure.
But yeah, so yeah, we have this thing, which hey, with +2 speed is on curve. That's speed 7. That's kind of insane. Now, if you had the speed and bonus in play, then you would have +2 speed and possibly ignore guard also, which finally gives you a reason to play this card, which I set aside as being the least notable special, because this card as printed is not good.
Yeah.
So
On
let's talk
curve.
briefly about the printed stats. Yeah, it's on curve
This
3 power, hit push 1.
This is a poke that doesn't beat anything, basically.
Correct.
Okay.
There's a board state in which it trades even with grasp. It's about the nicest thing you can say about it.
Yeah, that's not and even then it would require you to spend for your ability.
Correct. Yes.
Wow.
What if I paid a force to trade even with grasp in exactly when I was cornered? It's not
That's
good.
that's pretty dire, yeah.
Yeah, it's not good at all. What it is, however, is 6 + 2 = 8 to threaten my ignore guard at speed 8.
Okay.
Um, oh, speaking of ignore guard at speed 8, actually, I'm gonna jump right to this. Here's an ultra. You can now read this card.
This is a speed 8 ignore guard card, D.
Why, yes, it sure
At
is.
that hold up. That gains advantage for 2 gauge?
Correct.
That's that's ridiculous.
You are absolutely right. This is completely insane. It's nuts. It's busted. It's unreasonable. It's unfair. Nobody should have this card. Congratulations.
This is my big dumb ultra.
This is your big dumb ultra.
It's a big
It's
dumb
only got
ultra
4 power on it.
that only deals 4 damage. That's interesting.
Yep, but it's
So
your big dumb ultra.
so this there are no normals other than block, I guess, that this card does not beat at range 2.
Correct.
It wins against everything. It gains advantage. It's a great defensive option even if it doesn't gain advantage for whatever reason. That's a monster of a card for 2 gauge.
You're absolutely right.
So National Scar is not a boost. I'm not actually
You're
playing that
correct.
ever. Okay. Gotcha.
This is
Ballot,
why National Score is unplayable. It's on ballot fixing.
I'm sorry to derail us very briefly here, but I have to ask.
Mhm.
Is this ballot?
Yes.
Oh my god.
Yeah, he's getting fixed.
Okay, I've for people who don't know this, the Breakfast Club Discord has a bot to look up cards with named Ballot, and I've been a part of the Exceed community for 2+ years now, and I vaguely knew that Ballot was a reference to a character. I have never seen this man before. I don't know who he is. but it's Ballot. Okay, Ballot's in a couple different cards here. Ballot's getting annihilated.
Yeah, yeah. So Ballot is visible in three of these cards. We'll talk lore very briefly because this is fun.
Okay,
His name's not Ballot. That the joke is that his name must be Ballot because this is ballot fixing, and he
he's
sure got fixed.
he's getting fixed. Okay.
Uh,
Did you name
mhm.
this? D? Was
uh,
this you?
Ballot.
Yeah.
I feel like this is the community collective joke. I don't know if it came from anybody.
It just
It,
sort of
it probably
emerged.
came from late night playtest hangery with like
Okay.
me and Blue and Poulter and whoever else from way back in the day.
It
Um,
emerged fully formed from the Exceed consciousness.
yeah. Like this,
Okay,
as far as I can recall, at least, is a community joke.
that's so
Um,
funny.
much just like the mini faces of Ulrich or the mini Ulrichs. That's another story entirely. But
Wait,
um, on the note of Ulrich, though, he is actually Ulrich's brother.
Ballot is
That
Ulrich's brother.
is, yeah, Ballad is Ulrich's brother. Um,
Okay,
and Vincent killed him, which makes Ulrich the nemesis of Vincent.
got it.
Um,
Okay,
y- yep, like these arts are canon. This guy is getting killed. He gets
or
beat up. He gets killed.
Ballot. All right. So
Or Ballot.
but like that's actual canon. That's like Red Horizon canon. The existence of Ballot, the character being Ulrich's brother. So it's all correct except that his name isn't really Ballot.
Correct. As far as we know, his name has never been established.
Got it. All right, cool.
So we
Well,
decided to name him Ballot.
that makes sense to me. And now people use him every day in the Breakfast Club Discord. That's so funny, D. Okay,
Yep.
so ballot fixing is ridiculous. I'm going to use this card every chance I can get.
Yeah, it's completely insane. Hold a copy. Try not to let your second drop because your opponent knows this exists. They're terrified of it and they can't do anything about it, and they're going to try like their lives depend on it to do something about it.
right. So they're going to
So
play like
yeah,
lower commitment things until this card goes away.
yes, which means you
Right.
don't let the second copy go away until you're reshuffling, like until
Okay.
you're about to reshuffle.
Got it. Okay. Okay. All
Um,
right.
but yeah,
So
this is your Big Dumb Ultra. It's the card that beats everything. Now the rule of Big Dumb Ultras, right, is that they're footsies tools. They say if I'm standing in my favorite range, then I have this thing. That means you can't just stand here.
right.
Right? That's how they work. Well, the problem with that, were Vincent's opponents, is that this is a range 1 and 2 card, which is two of the ranges that most people in the game play at.
Sure. And like Exceed combat sort of trends to one. Like there's tons of
Correct.
things in Exceed. Like you're at range 3, you play Assault. You're at range 1, you get hit by ballot fixing. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
I like I've played enough against the AI in Browser Exceed to know that games just wind up at range 1 all the time.
Yep.
Uh, just by playing
The
cards. So
normals, yeah, the normals ground the fight at ranges 1 and 3.
yeah, so this will almost always be a present threat. I don't really need to jockey for position to play it.
Yep, it's gonna come up. Um, and yes, so this being the gold standard, this being the absolutely completely insane busted card, is why I started to move toward this. As I'm like, what if you could combine Ignore Guard
Right.
and +2 speed with a speed 6 attack? Because this is built around ballot fixing.
You would make ballot fixing. Okay.
Yeah. Um,
Even then it does, even this combo that took two turns to set up still doesn't gain advantage.
yeah. It's still weaker. It's a defensive only one, but it is a reasonable place to land when you go. I play Ignore Guard. My opponents either strikes or they get out of the way. If they get out of the way, I can chase them, and now I'm holding a speed 6 over them, and they're like, I made this worse for myself.
Right.
Um, like, and then similarly, if you use this to go to range 1, and they go, okay, you're now threatening your power 9 attack at speed 7.
Right.
I guess I can play Grasp while you can beat their Grasp with the speed 6. Or if they try to play more defenses on their side, you can just add Ignore Guard on top of it, and now they're screwed.
Got it.
Right?
Okay. So
Your opponent answers speed in range 1 with defend, and you go, your defend doesn't matter.
these two boosts combo together very well because one will provoke a response that the other can take advantage of. It's just that you also have the combo built into an ultra.
Yes.
Got it.
Yeah, like Ignore Guard commonly is answered by your opponent playing on curve. And you don't that means Ignore Guard by itself is not the tool that then you follow with Rushdown most of the time. But Rushdown more commonly is something that will bring you into range where your opponent does something that isn't just strike into it. They try to do something else, and then you can add Bunker Buster.
Okay.
Like Rushdown as your first boost tends to be good because Rushdown will take you toward range 1. It will probably take you to range 1 or 2, where you have this. And anyway, yeah. So like typically you can Rushdown to get into range. You'll put you at range 1 or 2. Gatling Punch is now a threat. Your opponent does something to try to defuse that. Where they have the option of trying to play on curve, but you can absolutely beat on curve because you have +2 speed, or like moving or playing their own boost. At which point you can generally add Bunker Buster, and now they are losing the boost war.
Okay. And you mentioned this a little bit earlier, D, but the comparison between this and light, that you want to play your +2 speed boost on your mid speeds. Conveniently, you have a range 1 mid speed that will work with this. All of that stuff is like that means that sweep still has a niche to turn on your dives and your spikes, because this kind of can't do that unless you're already being pretty hard zoned, in which case this is the freest boost in the world.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, if you're being zoned out range 5+, then yeah, go ahead and play this, get back in. If they try to push you out with the like get in range of a dive or spike, if they are a pure projectile zoner and you think they're going to throw a projectile to push you out, cool. Hit them with Crimson Barrage, make them regret their life decisions.
Right.
Like it's only speed 3, but speed 3 and guard is still likely to be able to hit back and cause them serious problems.
Right.
But most likely it's going to get you to range 3 or 4, where now dive is speed 6. Spike is speed 5, assault is speed 7. You got a lot of tools now.
Right. Okay. And
it's very free.
Light is what Light will do all of those things in typical melee range exceed that we're mostly concerned with. This boost Rushdown is, it really, just because of the close 2 in most play, kind of needs to be paired with cards like this, because you can't get spike or dive to work at range 1.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, like you need to have Gatling Punch available in order for this to be able to be its most threatening. You also can, just play range 1 light and be threatening Gatling Punch. I wouldn't actually recommend that. The reason I wouldn't recommend that is because Sweep has 6 power. And although I've said many wonderful things about Vincent, so far we have not seen, like, how to put this? Printed power 4, 3, 3. Printed power 2. But you can trade force. It's just that we know that demands on your force are very high.
Sure.
Printed power 4 on your Big Dumb Ultra. And we do have a 6. Although another expensive card. This probably costs at least 2, maybe 3 force. Probably just 2, honestly. But depending on the situation, you might throw a third. So like we have some expensive power values, but the stuff that we're getting efficiently is not strong. It's 3 power, an ultra for 4 power. So we like Sweep because Sweep does damage.
Right. Okay. And now, and Majority Whip, we have not even talked about this as a card yet, but it is not doing 6 damage. So in that case, Rushdown and Sweep and Light are, there's a clear preference here for Rushdown, just in terms of hitting with big numbers.
Yep. So this attack, I will talk about this now. Like Gatling Punch, it's a range 1 and 2, speed 5, mid speed. This has hit push 8. It does not deal a bunch of damage, but it beats Sweep by knocking you into the other end of the arena. So this is great because then you can close in with Rushdown. Wait a minute.
Yeah. You. I mean, I hope they throw a projectile into you that you can follow up with National Guard. Like, you do not seem like a zoner.
You're not. Okay. Yeah. This is a thing where it pushes 8, and maybe that's exactly what you need. In almost all cases, it's bad for you. The situation where it's good for you is where push 8 actually means push 3 or 4, where now they are at range, ideally 5, where a lot of people are just going to sit there and eat Crimson Barrage.
Right, because even without force expenditure, what are they going to do?
At range 5, most people just aren't going to beat it. If they have a projectile that pushes, then they can beat it. But you can't dive in from 5.
Right. Okay.
If they're cornered, they can't cross out, and if they get hit by Majority Whip, they are cornered. So this is a setup. It can work. I would recommend generally not relying on it, especially like trying to play answers in general. Majority Whip is a weaker way to deal with the things that you want to deal with than Gatling Punch.
Gatling Punch is, sure. So
and then you're setting up the question of Crimson Barrage and you're giving your opponent a way to answer it, and I would rather use this as an answer.
if you're controlling the mid board and this situation comes up, you might want to go for it. But this is not a game plan. This is an opportunity that might
Right.
arise. Okay.
Yes. And
I
I
gotcha.
would mostly only recommend it if you have the Crimson Barrage follow up, where because any chance to set this up is worth it.
Right. Sure. Yeah. No.
uh,
This hit effect is absolutely crazy.
yep.
Okay.
It's
So
crushing. It is basically game winning.
okay.
Mhm.
So we've got our big, unbelievably scary 9 power mid speed. We've got our bad card. We've got
Yep.
our card we probably aren't going to use very often. We've got our super parry. We've got a uh, kind of we haven't talked about it explicitly, but we've used it in the same breath as our cross counter. Um,
Yeah.
has
What it mostly is it's a very reliable 6 power.
right,
It's a 2/4 special that's going to hit for 6.
right, sure, and that I mean that's sweep numbers, and as you said, we don't have
Yeah.
a lot of power in our kit, so that's valuable. And then we have this thing, which is an abomination. Um,
Correct.
and there's only one card left, and it's an
Why,
ultra.
yes. It is a 3 gauge ultra, with the delta of 14.
Yeah, that's a high number.
Why, yes.
Okay,
All right. So here's the downside. This is a speed 1 card with 4 armor, which means it is, as with several of your cards, bolted to your ability.
right,
The only thing this normally will cover is things are grasp, assault, focus, and okay, block, I guess. It does beat block. It has hit, gain 4 life. Now we would just say gain because you can't go above your maximum as a rule. But anyway,
right.
but yeah, it's 4 armor, it's 6 power, and it heals for 4. So even if the armor doesn't matter for some reason, you've got 6 power and gain 4 life, which is a total of 10.
That's still
That's
good.
pretty good.
Yeah, that's
Um,
still great.
Yep. And then if the armor does matter, then like I said, the delta gets stupid where you go, okay, well, I paid 1 force, 3 gauge, played an ultra. You played sweep. I took 2. Uh, Actually, I gained 2, and you took
Right.
6.
And you took 6, and I guess I lose a card.
I lose a card. I lost a bunch of cards. I spent a bunch of resources. The only consolation is that this goes to gauge, and it is 2 force from gauge, and that's nice.
Right.
So earlier when I said I had more uses for gauge, I didn't just mean my ability, and I didn't even just mean ballot fixing. I also meant this.
Yeah, these are both amazing ultras. It's just that
These are both insane.
this one it seems like has the distinction of being, capital case the big dumb ultra. But
Yep.
Phoenix Revival is still seems very very strong.
Yeah. So you threaten ballot fixing, you hold serve your opponent, you manipulate them, you make them screw up, you waste their resources eventually when you decide to deploy it. But at some point down the line, as other smaller trades happen, if you get a chance to play this and have it lands, that will probably win you, 2/3 of the game.
Yeah,
Won't quite be win the game.
A couple strikes of value. It's not that doesn't seem that hard to land either. I mean, it's
Nope.
with some investment, it's sweep, and sweep, as we said, is
Yeah.
quite reliable.
It generally is sweep. It's generally quite reliable. If you see a chance to land this, you almost certainly should just do it. The only reason not to is if you have exactly 3 gauge and you are very, very sure that having ballot fixing up is worth more than having, 10 more damage effectively.
Right.
This is what makes up the numbers that I was saying that we were missing. Where I'm like, I like to have sweep, I like National Guard. We're missing power everywhere, but not here. This is where we're going to be at a life deficit for most of the game, and that's fine. Because ballot fixing wins for free, and Phoenix Revival, if it lands, if it trades, it trades up. It wins. Like
Yes.
this card doesn't lose strikes unless it doesn't hit. It's virtually impossible for somebody to outtrade this. Not strictly, of course. I can think of at least one card that would trade. Well, okay, without ignore armor. If they have ignore armor, then it's actually really easy for people to deal with this. Although I have on at least one occasion just played a 6-guard Phoenix Revival to deal with that.
It's just a more expensive one, but it still works just fine.
Not much more expensive, but it's still a total of 10. It's not
Right.
14 anymore, but it's 10 is fine.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, no, this card's insane. And earlier when I mentioned, I think I said, I hope I said that like boosting Nationals car is one of the worst things you could possibly do. As Vincent, I eventually reached the decision that boosting Moment of Reflection is another of the worst things you could possibly do.
Okay.
Spin Force to regain life. 1 for 1, as discussed, not really impressive value on armor. This is kind of like paying in armor.
I can see. Yeah, I can see the comparison. It's like armor after the fact. You already took the hit, but
Yeah, it's paying for armor if you knew you were faster. Where you're going, okay, well, I'm like, well, I said that badly, but you got the idea. It's you've taken the hit. You are now regaining life. You're paying for armor on the last strike. I guess that's the better
yeah,
way to put it.
there you go. Yeah, you're
Uh,
retroactively paying for armor.
yeah. But you're spending a turn. You're spending an ultra. So right, this is a baked-in cost of effectively 1 force because you're paying a card that's worth 2 force. So and then you have to spend more force to gain life. I'd rather just play this, right? 5 force in this ultra. I'd rather just spend the 7 and hit for 9.
Sure. Yeah.
Because that makes the same difference in life, except I'm hitting them, stunning them, and sorry, not even the same. This is better because I get to pay the ultra and all 2 points of power on.
Sure.
Yeah, like this.
And in that situation, you also have the option if you can stun them for less, you do stun for less, and you can still hit with Phoenix Revival later.
Yeah, that's the other thing this costs me a Phoenix Revival, and that is more than just cost me 2 force, cost me an ultra. That is also it cost me an absurdly high value card, a card that really I think is supposed to be the Big Dumb Ultra, except attack dynamics and interactions mean that ballot fixing
is
just
crazy.
wins.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Like ballot fixing is only diffused in most cases by the opposing Vincent having Phoenix Revival.
Yeah. Wow. Actually, yeah. The Vincent mirror is the ultra fight, I guess.
Yep.
That's very funny.
Yeah, and a few other people, who might be able to scrape together 4 armor, but it's pretty hard to get 4 armor most of the time for most people.
Or I mean, as always, when we say unbeatable, we're foregoing range dodge,
speed-based dodge.
There's plenty of ways. Plenty of ways might
stun
be
immunity.
Yes, plenty of ways might be an exaggeration, but there are ways to beat ballot fixing.
There are ways. There are plenty of characters who can find a way to do it. Right. Most people won't have multiple.
Okay.
Some won't have any. For some, the way to beat it is that you bait it with block or you parry it. And that's your option.
That's about the best.
So what most people, so what most people will default to doing is just playing lower commitment stuff.
Right.
And if they're doing that, in all likelihood, you can say, all right, I will find a way to spend force on something, or maybe even not spend force on something that filters all their low commitment options out of the ways for them to win, and says, all right, I'll play this, and now I'm going to at least trade and probably trade up against anything they could have played that's reasonable. Because if they wanted something that, lost acceptably to ballot fixing, then I can find something else that beats it because they didn't play something that's crazy good.
It's crazy because ballot fixing is still a threat. Sure.
Yeah, like they're probably not committing their own 3-gauge ultra that loses cleanly to ballot fixing, so I don't have to worry about their own 3-gauge ultra. I just play something else. Play against something else, rather. All right, I think there's 2 holes in the kit that I haven't come back to, so let's look at the other 2 boosts. Yeah,
2 more boosts here.
All right, so this boost is worth playing because this attack is so bad.
It's uncontested.
Yeah, it's not really contested by the attack. I mean, like I said, Phoenix Ascent has a purpose. It's on curve. That's its purpose. It's printed speed of 6. That's what it's got. 2 armor is nice. Opponents cannot move you. Doesn't usually matter very much, but can be nice. What that generally does is it says, okay, now my Gatling Punch with 1 force investment beats everything because it doesn't lose to grasp. So, you generally play Foundation at range 1, and now you're either trading better on whatever you're trading with, or you're winning cleanly on whatever you were, on this, specifically this.
Right.
But like 1 force for 2 armor, we like that value. That is a very efficient value. 1 for 1 is not great. 1 for 2 is much better.
Right, and opponents cannot move you, like, even discounting grasp. There's a lot of push effects in Exceed. There's a lot of ways to shut down play by saying that you can't be moved.
Yeah, okay. That is a matchup tool in many cases. The armor is a more general purpose, probably going to be good. And it only costs you a Phoenix Ascent. I will still often decide it's more worth my turn to prepare because those 2 cards are more valuable than just having 1 card and having this in play. This is strange when you look at the numbers because I'm only getting one card and this could be giving me 2 armor. And one card, like I said, is probably like 2 armor is generally better than 1 force. But cards are options, not just force.
Not just force, right? You can use them for other ways or in
Yeah,
other
which is
ways.
why I'm going to value having those things in hands.
Okay.
Because this, if if I end up drawing the EX of this, then I actually have a DP that isn't an ultra. I have a 1, 2, 4, 7, which is
right.
Fine. Like that's reasonable. I have a
And,
above curve range 2 option.
and that's a solid. That means that's a solid defensive option that is not competing with your prepare action or whatever because you can do that on your opponent's turn.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep. The next boost is so numerically this is better than your ability, right? This is 1 force. 2 force because you pay this card and 1 force for
Right.
+5 guard and strike. So if you need 5 guard, not 4, and you need to initiate, okay, sure, I guess you can play it. In my opinion, that's about it. I would generally like the reason I'm using my ability, or rather, I should say the situation when I'm using my ability generally, as I've described it, is on my opponent's turn. Like I'm going to be using my ability on my turn only if I needed to, and that means I needed both to initiate and to have the guard. So
And,
this is okay. There's a very specific thing. There's a very specific threat. I need exactly this.
right. Because as we were talking about earlier, the use case for your ability is to force a trade. The utility of initiating most of the time is the potential to win clean. Those two things don't really work together very often. It seems like needing guard but also needing to initiate is rare.
Yeah, it's uncommon, and even then, it's more common that you don't need 5 exactly. You need 4 or 6, probably 4.
Right.
In which case, don't do this, or at least probably don't do this because there are probably going to be. There's probably one other card that's worth less than Gatling Punch because I consider Gatling Punch high value because it's your range 1 mid speed, it's your focus breaker, it's super scary.
Yeah, Gatling Punch is one of the first things you showed me.
Yep.
It's
awesome. It's a special that hits for 9.
Yeah, no,
like,
yeah, that's 9 damage is not a small amount of damage. Okay.
Yep.
So
the other case for Fortress Frame, for what it's worth, is if you need this and your ability.
You gotta
if that has happened,
really really high guard numbers.
Yes, I've done it. I have in fact played a 15 guard sweep to trade with Shadow of Death.
Yeah, that'll do it. If you're up against the Big Dumb Ultra season,
it's you'll almost never need that, and you generally shouldn't even bother thinking about that as a use case.
Right.
If you need it, you'll know it. But you're probably not going to need more than 12 guard. And if 12 is the number you needed, cool. You've got sweep, you've got an ability. Use them.
Use those.
Don't use this.
Okay. So discounting the fact that I want to talk about what we spend as force in just a second here. These are attacks every day of the week. These are excellent boosts. This is also a pretty solid attack. This is not really an attack most of the time. This is almost always a boost. This is almost always an attack. This is almost always an attack.
Yes, just discounting our force cost. Yes.
So with that established, I think that we should definitely talk a little bit about how to spend for Vincent's ability because the nuances of how to control your economy are, I think, going to be very, very difficult for a character like him.
This is the hard part.
Yeah, any advice on that? Because I guess so we've talked about Ramlethal before. We've talked about Remulus before. Both of them you spend as like a state. You are spending you're spending an amount of resource for a binary choice. You either have range or you don't. You either have an EX or you don't. Vincent, it's kind of like fight. You are spending up to for a variable amount of value. So it's not just when do you spend; it's how much do you spend.
Correct.
Okay.
So the first part of my answer to this is you need to be playing your opponent, not the character, and not meaning that you're playing as your opponent, but
right.
You need to be going, what do I think my opponent is doing here? Right. Whenever they initiate a strike, determine what you think they're playing, or at least determine all the things that they might be playing. I say at least as though that's a small task, right? Just all the things that they could be playing. and all the possible stat values they could have, because that's what will determine for you the amounts that are reasonable to spend. This by the way, like the reason we all thought Vincent was so bad was not just looking at his cards. It was actually we tried to play him back in the day. We tried to play him early on and concluded that he was bad after much experience, because using his ability is extremely hard.
Okay.
You can't do it heuristically or you will waste force. You can't just go, okay, I'm going to play an assault and also staple on 4 guard because I know that makes assault unbeatable. You need to have a reason to spend that. You might just play the assault without, even at range 1. Like, that's not a play that you should throw out the window. And if you try to make your cards like heuristically functional at all times, where like, yeah, when I play National Guard, it always has 6 guard. When I play Assault, it always has 4 guard. You will run out of force. You will
Right.
not be able to maintain your ability. So,
Okay.
and yeah, like this is why in particular I mentioned how Crimson Barrage is super high value, and how when you see a chance to set it up, you should take it. If you see a chance to cross out and land it at range 5, your opponent doesn't have any range 5 options, take it, because that's when you get to play a Crimson Barrage that costs 0 force.
Right.
You know, and I have also played National Guard at 0 force, where I just go, yeah, they're playing Sweep or Focus, I'll just mash it. Like find those opportunities to play these cards that are expected to cost something most of the time that you play them, or because that's that they serve on them. But without spending anything on them,
So
like because you're playing them in a different way.
So going back to that story you told earlier about there was a stream request or something, and you picked up Vincent, and wait a minute, these things worked. The balance patch that they hot fixed in to Exceed is that at some point you got better at evaluating this economy, and
Yeah, the
and
bounce patch was that I mained rimless.
sure, oh sure, yeah, you got more used to learning how to spend resources for effects.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so for new players, this character is hard, and
Yes.
they're like with every guide, there is an implicit understanding, at least on my end, that with every guide we do, I am not going to leave this lesson and immediately be a master with this character. But with Vincent in particular, this guide is a starting point, not the entire character. He's hard. He will
No.
continue to be hard even after I know what all of his attacks do.
Yes. And I'm going to try to explain as much as I can about how to make these economic decisions, because it's so much of playing Vincent within at least a reasonable amount of time. We'll see how we do. But even if I explain that, even if you understand all of it, you should still expect that picking up this character and playing him is going to be a journey of figuring out how to manage his resources. That's, if you understand 100% of his kit in one sitting, you will still have to learn how to play Vincent. The hard part of playing him is resource management, and it's making those decisions of when to spend and what to spend. Because in order to make those decisions, you have to first answer why you're spending, and that means knowing everything that your opponent could be doing.
That means knowing the matchup. That means knowing your opponent's character. That means knowing your opponent's specific tendencies and
Yep.
patterns. That like there's a
Yep.
huge amount of overhead that's going on even before we talk about the cards.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So as I've gone through his kit, I've talked a lot about how, like, yeah, this hits these important values, right? This is a cross catcher because it hits range 2 to 5. This does enough damage to break focus and sweep. And if you combine these things together, you end up with a speed 8 ignore guard. Like, and these are, in BattleCon we used to call these magic numbers, right? These are things that are heuristically good, where you can make decisions going, yeah, I know that works. But the thing about these, right, is that I know these from experience because I played so much Vincent. You have to find these, and you have to find them dynamically.
Okay.
In situations where your opponent is not just playing normals; they could be playing anything, and you go, "Oh, actually, I need to play this specific thing. I need to hit this particular stat line." Right. So when I play Vincent, it's not uncommon for me to be like, "Okay, so I need to play a card at this speed with this much defense. So I play this, and then I play whatever it is, and I spend whatever I have to spend." Right? But you're determining what you need to answer, and then you're crafting your answer to it.
So so
Um,
so naturally, this is
mhm,
going to be easier when the probability space is smaller. When my opponent has a lot of things in discard, for example, when they have a lower band of threats that they're actually meaningfully leveraging.
mhm,
But these are decisions that I'm going to have to be making all game when my opponent is at their most varied. Um, and so I guess the first question is like, can Vincent afford to guess wrong, or is the economic loss of whiffing with your character ability or overspending with your character ability so crushing that a lost mix-up as Vincent is even worse than a lost mix-up for most characters.
It's bad, but you do have the free wins to help you make up value.
Okay,
You have ballot fixing.
you've got these.
You've got Phoenix Revival, which is not free because you have to work your way to it. You have to get to 3 gauge and be willing to play it instead of ballot fixing, but you can get there. But in particular, like the presence of ballot fixing and the ability to just rob your opponent, steal a strike out from under them, is great. Like the ignore guard boost, the extra speed boost, as well, especially if you can combine them, which some opponents will not let you, and it's good for them. But any way you can get like win strikes clean is great, or make up an immense amount of delta with Phoenix Revival, is great. Like that's how you deal with that. Like I'll put it this way: you can and should expect to be able to get enough value to win a game without ever landing Crimson Barrage, because it is such a strong attack. It is so punishing that your opponent should be playing so hard against it that you never have a safe opportunity to land it. And if you land it, you want a hard mix up, and they never let you have that option.
Right.
Given that, right, if you land it, cool, you just won like 3 or 4 strikes. Now you can afford to use a little bit more. You can afford to be a little bit riskier. So that's how a lot of these work. Where you go, okay, I'll play the Gatling Punch, and if it gets stunned, I'm sad. If it wins super duper hard, and my opponent is super duper sad. That one's expensive, of course, but like that's the general pattern with Vincent in my experience, is that you're expecting to trade down gradually over time. Anytime you get a clean win, or even not even a clean win, because that implies that you didn't get hit, but anytime that you win with the win condition of one of your cards being what it is, so Phoenix Revival hitting, Crimson Barrage hitting,
hitting with Crimson Barrage, hitting with your incredible delta or your crushing hit effect, like those are noteworthy spikes of power that you have. But most of the time, in sort of the filler offense and filler defensive exceed, you are probably going to be incrementally falling behind your opponent.
Yep, and you're expecting that, or you should expect that, I should say.
Okay.
And so it's like basically when you get a little ahead because you won something clean instead of just trading down, you called a mix up, or your opponent made a huge mistake. Those are generally the cases. Usually, it's going to involve calling a mix up because it is exceed after all. It's fighting it.
Sure.
Those are the windows where you go, okay, this has now given me enough space that I can take a risk later, right? So like I've played some games where I'm doing that in my head. I'm actually counting. I'm like, all right, won that mix up that was risky, that I wasn't really expecting to win. Now I can take 2 more risks because that was the value of that mix up.
Okay. So new players who are picking up Vincent, this may not help with the, again, you can't really heuristically figure out what you're spending because you're Vincent and you don't have that luxury. But this establishes your guardrails. These are the margins that you have for success and failure. That if you can land Phoenix Survival, you're probably going to land ballot fixing. That's no problem. But if you can land these cards, you have greater margins for error to be wrong occasionally and to push a little bit harder on your riskier mix-ups. Is when you say risk, are you talking about spending more, or is that safety? And the risk that you're talking about is occasionally just throwing a Gatling punch raw.
So when you're interacting with mix-ups, it's not because you're spending. Because not usually, right? It's like if I play National Guard with 0 Force, because I'm certain that they're playing a sweep. Right. I'm interacting in a mix-up. I'm not spending on my ability. Spending on my ability is how I would make that cover things.
I see. Okay.
But so, that's one half of it. But when I say that frees you up to take risks, that's when I'm actually talking about spending, which is like, this sounds weird. A mix-up which is intrinsically risky.
Yeah.
But I think when you choose to engage in a mix-up instead of spending on your ability, you're choosing to be conservative with resources, but risky with your life. And then when you're spending resources in order to not take as big a risk on your life, like, to me, that's kind of the life bar that I'm more concerned about. So that's why I'm thinking of like being freed up to take risks means that I have more space to make mistakes with resources. Because if I run low on life, I might still have ballot fixing. I might still have Phoenix Survival.
Right.
I can still win cleanly multiple strikes. If I run out of cards, I lose. Like Vincent does not function without resources. Like you might have ballot fixing. You're down to 1 gauge, you lose the game. Like if you're late game Vincent with no gauge, you can't threaten your ultras. You are screwed.
Okay. Okay. So
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 resources are your life and death.
so what risky means in this paradigm is uh investing to afford safety, which
Yep.
I agree is kind of a strange
I'm using a
concept to
very
get your
poor
head
choice
around.
of words.
And
Sorry.
I honestly I don't know how else to say it because of how we're talking about Vincent. I think that is probably the correct way to say it. Um, so when I'm but that speaks to the mindset of the character. When I am throwing out a national guard because I'm pretty sure they're going to play a sweep, and that is a call out that I'm making. In Vincent terms, that is safe.
It's
Spending
low risk, you know.
lower risk, yeah,
Yeah.
that's a better way to put it.
Yeah.
Spending on my character ability is uh the higher obviously the higher investment option, and that makes it a higher commitment, scarier option to do. I need to be more sure that it's worth it.
hmm
I
Right.
gotcha.
Because
Okay.
if I play National Guard, I'm like, all right, what's my worst case? I lose cleanly. I get hit by a grasp or cross.
Right.
That's bad. If I play National Guard, pay 2 force, my opponent played a sweep, I'm down 4 cards. I need 2 turns to recover that.
Right.
Like they get to do whatever they want for 2 turns before I'm back to the threshold I was at before.
Right.
That's real bad.
Okay. So there
Uh,
is this like the interplay, the economic interplay between cards and life is complicated enough, but now we have cards, life, and turns in this
yep.
triangle, and figuring out what is worth more in the moment is
Yeah.
and frequently they're going to be sort of fungible and like cards equals turns, but that equals life because my opponent can hit me on those turns. Like there's going to be interplay between
Yeah.
those things.
You
But
can
I
juggle those 3 resources in different ways, but it's hard. It comes at a cost. You have to do it all right.
I gotcha. Okay. So
Oh, and by the way, you can't spin force for life. This boost says you can. Don't.
right,
Um,
right,
you know
yeah,
that one says you should be able to trade, turns and cards at the same time to gain life, but it's just not worth it because the
yeah.
exchange ratio, the ratio of exchange is so bad.
The only way that you can spend force for life is by paying 3 gauge that could be used as force to hit with Phoenix Revival.
Pretty much.
And
Um,
getting 4 life that way.
yeah. There you go.
Okay, okay.
Or pay
Um,
3 gauge and a bunch of force to gain armor, which is effective life.
sure, that makes sense. Um, so in terms of what I'm spending, um, are there any cards that under no circumstances will you spend as Vincent for your character ability, or is everything on the table?
Everything's on the table. The cards that I'm the least likely to spend are generally uh, actually, well, let's put it this way. Um, there are 4 items in the lineup. Um, the value of focus and sweep is probably obvious, but for what it's worth, the numeric value of these is 6 in both cases. Focus is a little safer. Focus works even if your opponent plays cross and leaves or whatever. Gets you that after, even if you're not, as long as you're not stunned, even if your opponent moves out of range because they played cross or dive or whatever. Like that's great. So focus tends to be nice, reliable, safe, conservative, and in keeping with the overall Vincent play pattern. Like maybe if you lose the strike, you lost it by losing a little bit, and that's fine. You kept a card because you traded focus for a different card, and that's acceptable.
Right. Okay.
Um, these two both have speed boosts on them, which is great for enforcing nasty threats a lot of the time because you've got a range 1 mid speed. You have a source of ignore guard on a boost, right? So these are both pretty valuable boosts. Also, sweep as an attack is sweep. It hits super hard. It's got the number 6 printed on it, and if it hits, the opponent loses a card, which brings you a little bit of consolation in terms of what expenditures look like. Where you go, now they are down something at least. You don't get to make them discard very often, but you hit this or Crimson Barrage, and things look a lot better for you.
Right.
Um, and then this is purely because of Rushdown. Is why I would put that. Would
Okay.
you like to guess what the 4th item is?
I'm going to assume it's ballot fixing. I can't imagine why.
That's a very good guess. The correct answer is the second copy of anything of any of these.
Okay. So
You don't
as
need
good
two ballot fixings. You don't need two Phoenix Revivals. You
as
like two ballot fixings. You don't need two Phoenix Revivals.
as good as my ultras are, they can also be two force, and two force is a character ability expense. That could be a one mix up or a a forced trade, which could be all
Yep.
I need to win a game. Okay.
Yep. And they can be like change cards is an action that you can and should consider. Where if you need options, well, if you don't have the gauge, these are not themselves going to answer anything. If you're at 2 gauge, Phoenix Revival isn't going to do anything yet. Like your first ballot fixing can drop, although you would typically prefer that your opponent parries it if they have parry, and if they don't have parry, then just kill them with it at some point, or just just hit them.
Right.
It's a free strike. I say free. It does convert 2 gauge into 1 card engage that is worth 2 force, but is only 1 gauge, so it delays your Phoenix Revival. But yeah, like you want to maintain your options, and in particular with regard to Gatling Punch, Crimson Barrage, yeah, these things, all this nonsense, all these
Right.
ridiculous cards.
All these amazing cards. You will spend them if you need the force, as long as it's not your second copy.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Second copy, you should try to find something else if possible. Then okay, when's my reshuffle coming up?
And because you called out sweep and focus in particular, I assume that the other normals are also on the table in terms of force expenditure. You are okay to spend those.
Yeah, absolutely. The general like all of these and this I'm perfectly fine throwing away as force. I will also throw away spike, however, I'd rather just boost it. Like,
oh sure,
it's my ability twice. Like it's more efficient. So if I think I might need my ability in the next strike, I'll just boost it.
Okay.
But yeah, second copy of spike also deserves some special mention. But I personally lean so hard on Gatling Punch that I don't use spike all that often. It is nice that it destroys block though.
Right. Okay.
Cross is nice because you can very often find a way to win a strike clean with Cross, and sometimes when you do, it sets up a Crimson Barrage. So I actually value Cross like higher than all of these, but still willing to spend it if I need to. It's just that hey, this might give me a free win, and 3 life plus a gauge is pretty good.
And in terms of how I'm actually using these normals, with the exception of the sort of strangeness of Vincent's character ability and his tendency to be doing most of his offense on his opponent's turn, am I mostly just relying on good old regular exceed normal fundamentals and playing these the way that another character would? Or
Yeah, I mean
do I?
the notable exception, right? Exceptions, I guess. Assault can have 4 guard bolted to it, and now it's assault with 4 guard. Which means that it doesn't lose to grasp anymore.
Yep.
EX assault with +2 guard is the same stat line. It's assault with defend in play, right? So that also works just fine. Often, if you're EX assaulting, you shouldn't need that because you probably initiated, but maybe that's not the world we live in. Like initiated not a ranged one, I mean, but so that assault is a card that loves having guard, and you can give it guard, and that's nice. Dive in particular has relevance in the Fireball meta. If you're up against projectiles and you don't have Crimson Barrage, Dive +4 guard will almost certainly get you in against most anything, and then you're not in the Fireball meta anymore, and you can be at range 2 where you're way scarier.
Right. Okay.
So those are the special mention buttons as far as the normals go.
Okay. And then playing any of these boosts, any of the normal boosts or the special boosts, except for the ones that we're never going to play, they need to be weighed against the value of the prepare action for me. So like you already mentioned that light would be awesome, except I really need to hit with sweep to make up my damage. Defend is cool. It gets me my ability. My other normal boosts, I'm looking at tech and I really might need to get rid of that boost, and that's a legitimate use case. But I might need to prep. And sometimes when I'm looking at these boosts, I need to evaluate them against that value. Correct?
Yeah, and yes, and it's worth noting. So a lot of characters have to think carefully about the interplay of backstep and run. There's not much reason for you to backstep. You only have 1 projectile. It's a very scary projectile, but like, you might in the unusual situation that you have your opponent cornered, you are free to backstep to range 5 and then watch them slowly read over your kit and realize that they have to advance.
Right.
I don't think that's like particularly amazing because they will probably just advance and you had them cornered, which tends to be good. So like maybe you find uses for that. I would typically hang on to the assault because it's easy to make assault good. Run is exclusively reserved for getting out of the corner, and that's honestly not even that important for you because if you need to close, you've got this. Like you from like turn 1, some people like to run forward 2 or 3 spaces. You have a much better way to do that. You don't need run to advance because you have this to close. The only reason you want to advance is to get out of the corner. And if you're cornered, your opponent's probably committed to trading, and you are already committed to trading, so it's not even that bad for you.
Okay, sure, makes sense. And as you mentioned, cross is something that you can actually use to frequently win a strike cleanly, and that's valuable to you. So cross will be used more frequently than run will.
Yes, I would say so.
Okay, sounds good. All right, so that unless you have more stuff to say about the
one
normals,
last note.
please.
If there's any chance that you can land Crimson Barrage, hold on to a focus.
Oh yeah,
it has reading on it.
yeah,
and especially if you land Crimson Barrage on your opponent's turn, this might give you a free. This might actually win you like 4 strikes at once, where you knock away half their hands and you force them to play a normal that moves them in, so that you can whop them with sweep or something.
right.
Like that's not even particularly outlandish. So to clarify, not every season has reading, but most of them do. Reading is name a normal strike, put them a set it, or reveal a hand without. If you just saw their hand, you know what they have. If they haven't had a chance to get rid of them, then you can make them play whatever normal you know they have. Sure. And if you're at Crimson Mirage range, that can be really bad. Like if they have anything that moves forward. So the most common plays there are if they have a Diver Assault, you're probably at range 5. You're probably at range 3 to 5. If you're at range 3, then you can name a block of focus, play spike. You can name a grasp and play anything you want. If they're at range 5, you want to name one of these and then play a spike or a sweep of your own, so that they are faster. They move in and then you hit them.
So now you have turned 2 super parries, hand information, and also on top of that, probably 5 or 6 free damage.
Mm-hmm.
5 or 6 untraded damage. You spent a focus on it, but
yeah,
that's ridiculous. Yeah.
Yep. So yeah, like focus is great. Reading is it's strong for everybody who has it. It is even stronger than normal for you because you have a way to get hand information that is beyond just parry. Okay. So yeah, that was the other additional note I wanted to make.
Sounds good. So a lot of actually not quite playing normals like a normal Exceed character. He does have very Vincent normals then. Okay, and all of these could be spent as force to afford my character ability when I need to. And then sort of the final kind of strategy question that I had, unless you had other things to mention, is what is worth it to initiate with as Vincent? Because most of what you're doing is going to be responding to your opponent and just prepping up on your turn. But a couple times now we've talked about when it is actually good to throw a card as Vincent.
Well, so half the answer is the extremely useful when it's the best thing you can do. And okay. what I to elaborate on that, if you've got a full hand, if you have 7 cards, your opponent's playing passively enough to actually let you have that, or you have just been playing defensively enough and we're past the last exchange. And for example, and by the way, you should be wild swinging a fair amount of the time because you just won't have the resources to do the things that you would prefer to do all the time. Okay. So you're expecting to lose those strikes. To be clear, it's just like you go, okay, I will lose some strikes in return for having the options that I need. You are not running the grappler dynamic where you win one mix-up so hard, though you might. With either of these, you might. It's just that because wild swinging doesn't cost you a card from hand, and you care about hand so much, you will need to wild swing. It's not something that you want to do; it's something that you should expect to have to do.
So the commitment tier list, again, I'm using tier list as a metaphor twice now. The commitment tier list as Vincent is investing with your character ability, playing a mix-up, wild swinging.
Right.
Okay, so you invest with your character ability when you're positive you need to. You wild swing when you know for a fact that you can't afford to.
Yep.
You can't afford to do anything else.
It's even negative. You can't even afford to play a card from hand.
yeah. Okay, I gotcha. Okay, makes sense.
And wild swing is not something you want to do. And to reemphasize, I've said this twice. Let me say it again. Wild swing is not something you want to do. The reason I keep saying this over and over and over and over is because if you wild swing, there's a decent chance that the card that comes up is a card that would be really important if you had it as an answer for some specific situation, and now it's gone.
Right.
You top deck ballot fixing, and you go, oh, well, that copy of ballot fixing is dead forever. This has now limited how you can play the rest of the game.
Right. And in order to confirm a lot of your offense, you would need to spend with your character ability. Oh, but you're wild swinging. That is an incredibly gutsy investment if you are spending on your on your deck rather than your hand.
Right. Yeah. Like the time it makes sense to spend on a wild swing is when it's not exactly a wild swing because you know what's left in your deck and you run the numbers and it's statistically like very good. Where you go, okay, actually, I want to play these cards from my deck and I would want to spend on most or all of them. Sure. But at that point you're not wild swinging for resources. You're wild swinging because the card you want is in your deck, which is always a good reason to wild swing. I recommend that for every character.
Sure.
That's just part of my general playstyle. Okay, so to answer the question that you had previously asked about when are you initiating? It could be because you actually don't have a better way to spend your turn because you're happy with the board state, your advantage. You don't need more cards in hands. You don't even need different cards in hands. Okay, sure, initiate. Like probably win the next strike if you're at or neutral or advantaged, and you don't see an efficient way to get a bigger advantage or to over. Sorry, I almost said overinvest. That's what I do. Right? I'm like, I'm winning. Time to add more power.
Right.
Then my opponent changes things, and now I'm not winning anymore. Oops. But that's my MO. It's not necessarily something that is a good idea. No, a good idea is you're like, okay, I've got all the resources I need. Cool. I can take a risk here, or I can do. I can. Well, yeah, take a risk by initiating a strike, and then, yeah, let what happens happen, and then my opponent's turn happens, and I can still respond to them with whatever I want because I had the hand that allowed that. If you don't have a hand that allows that, then you should be doing something other than initiating in all likelihood.
Okay, it's less that like I have specific cards that I'm willing to initiate with from hand, and it's more that I'm looking at the situation and seeing whether it is affordable to initiate from hand or initiate at all.
Right. Yeah. So one case is it's the best that you can do because you don't need to do anything else. And the other case is you need that speed tie.
Right.
And that can happen a decent amount. That's not even odd. Where you go, okay, I am out of my cross counters, but I have Phoenix Ascent, the on curve. I need to initiate with something so that they know that I might be playing a speed 6, so they won't necessarily play cross. Because if I don't initiate, they can play cross and they win for free. Right? Like that's a situation where you go, okay, I need to initiate because otherwise they will be able to win the next strike guaranteed.
Okay. And again, it probably bears repeating that in that situation when I need the speed tie, I am almost definitely not spending for my character ability.
You're probably not spending on your ability.
Yeah, because the two are almost non-overlapping. If I'm up against someone who has a DP and I need to filter for that while also attacking on curve, maybe, but most of the time that's not really what my ability is for.
Yep. Oh yeah, and relatedly, by the way, it is justifiable if you are initiating where you go, okay, the speed time matters for this. If you need your opponent not to play something, and you can filter it by playing guard on something else, then play the guard. Right? So you go, okay, I'm going to play something, and I play +4 guard, and the opponent's like, okay, well, it's probably +4 guard assaults, so they're not going to play assaults. So you play spike. Right? Like you. Okay. This is the bluffing use. Usually don't do this, but if what you're doing is really obvious, you can use that to your advantage.
Right.
Where you go, okay, it's super obvious that I would be playing assault here, and then you don't play assault.
Okay, and of course, you cannot bluff on defense. This is only for when you are initiating. Please do not do what I have tried to do and crit bluff as Ryu on defense.
Oh my goodness.
That's not how the game works.
Do not do that. That's not good for your health.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, but other than that,
like at that point, you're taking on the higher level of risk and the higher level of and the medium level of success, right? Where you're going, okay, resources, but I'm still actually playing a mix up.
Right.
So you're taking both types of risk. You're taking the resource risk, and you're also doing something that, yeah. So, do it sometimes. if you're confident you can get away with it. So much of this character is about reads. So much of this character is about I say reads. It's really conditioning, right? It's about watching what your opponent does, paying attention to their habits, and then manipulating their behavior by doing specific things that you know that they'll respond to in certain ways,
For
and
sure.
then anticipating their response, you do what you need to do.
Right. Okay. So I will initiate when I need to or when I can. I will prep a lot. I will have a defensive mix-up ready on my opponent's turn when I can afford to. I will throw filler defense when I can't afford to. I will wild swing when I can't afford to do either. I will put these good boosts down. I will get these big value wins when I can, and hope to kind of win in aggregate. Is that basically the Vincent game plan?
Yes, and I would like to note in particular between the notes of I will prep a lot and I will have defensive a defensive mix up in hands. The thing in the middle is I'll change cards to get that defensive mix up in hands where you
Right.
go, I need defensive options. I can change cards to get them if I have, if I don't just need numbers of cards in hands, then you can start looking at changing cards to get through stuff.
Okay.
This carries the inherent risk of filling your discard, giving your opponent information, but it may well be worth it if your existing hand was really bad.
Right. Makes sense. Okay. Cool. Any other strategic considerations for Vincent, or should we move into counterplay?
Nothing is coming to mind at the moment.
All right. How do you stop this guy?
All right. So it would be nice if I could say like, well, obviously he wants to beat you when you initiate, so just don't initiate. That's not a great idea.
Right.
It is generally true in Exceed that if you just always let the opponent have the initiative and decide how strikes are happening, you will lose overall. And that's true of Vincent. He just also wants to beat you when you're initiating. So like, don't let you can't just play as low tempo as possible because giving him free resources is the worst thing you can do.
Right. That seems like a
Um,
bad idea.
yeah. Accordingly, um, being aggressive into him is generally good. He will feel like he counters you if you're a restaurant character because you'll go, oh man, I rely on being fast enough to stun. I rely on him not having these tools that he definitely has. I rely on these things. But the resource strain of playing Vincent is intense. Like he can't throw guard at everything. So if you go, okay, well yeah, he steals advantage by playing 4 guard assault when I played assaults. He hits my sweep for 6 power, and I did nothing to him. Well, okay, that's actually bad. But anything he spends on, it is he is draining his resources, and for him, the reason a character said is risky, right? Is like now he has fewer cards. Now he has to spend time to make up more cards. If you're able to advantage chain, or just in general, if you're able to be aggressive effectively with fewer resources, then Vincent's able to be defensive effectively. You can run him out of decent defenses, and then he dies because, as we've seen, his numbers are not impressive.
Right. Without that guard stapled onto it.
Yeah, and even then, the numbers that
The power numbers are kind of never impressive outside of. I see what you mean. Yeah, outside of particular
he's got the 7 power and he's got this.
Right.
Sorry, the 9 power. Although it's generally not 9, it's usually 7 or 8.
Right.
By the way, playing focus is reasonable as like a low commitment thing where it deals with all his specials in some way or another at ranges 1 and 2. Whether it deals with Phoenix Revival, I leave up to you to determine. Whether it deals with Crimson Barrage, I leave up to you to determine. If he plays Gatling Punch, it's going to feel bad. It's still only a narrow loss because he has to spend out the nose.
Right.
I would still say generally Vincent wins that, but it's painful for him to win that. It often can be surprisingly significant, the difference between he paid 1 more force and dealt 2 less damage versus if you go up against Sweep, where he pays 1 less but he does 7 damage.
Right.
Because with focus you will take 6, but he paid more force, which means that the focus is a better case for you, the defender.
So the way that the kind of the theme that we're talking about here for what my opponent is doing then is making me spend. Whether that is okay, put 4 guard on your assault to steal my advantage back, or spend enough for Gatling Punch to break focus. One of the ways to beat Vincent is to force him to use his ability.
Yeah, and if he doesn't, it's because he's probably losing strikes, right? Or he's calling mix-ups, and then only so many of those can go his way. Um, and then correspondingly, the reason that this can win you the game is the other thing you need to do is not give him time to rebuild, right? Like that's what it's like. The worst thing you can do is give him free resources, meaning the worst thing you can do is give him extra turns where you go, sure, I'll prep 3 times. You prep 3 times, Vincent preps 3 times. Vincent won that exchange.
Okay.
That's not a hard rule. Not everybody cares about resources equally, but Vincent is one of the most resource-intensive characters in the game. Making his decisions easier is extremely bad for you.
Okay.
Um, you want him to be excruciating. Uh, is that that's an adjective, isn't it?
Making excruciating decisions.
Thank you. Yes. It's like, wait a minute. Uh, over you want him to be agonizing over
There you
every
go.
decision he makes.
Right.
That is both a noun, or that's both a verb and an adjective. But anyway, um, like you want him to go, okay, I've got 3 cards in hands, and it's like assault, sweep, and ballot fixing, and I feel like I should play 4 guard assault. Well, this sucks, right?
Right.
You want Vincent to be in that kind of situation, and not to look at a hand of 6 or 7 cards and go, okay, yeah, I'll keep the important stuff and ditch the other stuff and be fine. So don't give him free turns. Don't let up. This is true even if you're not a rushdown character. Even if you're a grappler, grapplers exert pressure, right? Like how they do it is basically by standing at their favorite range and then flexing. And then if the opponent gives them the chance, then they'll strike, and now there's a gigantic mix. If you're a zoner, cool. Push him out. Watch out for Crimson Barrage. It will ruin your life. Um, you don't. That doesn't mean you should always play to cover it, but it does mean you should be looking very carefully at ranges 4 and 5, and especially range 5. Vincent doesn't like playing Barrage at 4, where it's like, okay, well at range 4, what is he striking with? Dive or Crimson Barrage? It's
Which one?
barely a mix up.
Which one am I going to
Like,
cover? I wonder.
yeah, and if you can cross out, you just cross out. Like if you can cross to range 6, you just do.
Sure.
Um, and so like he doesn't tend to like that. He wants to have you cornered, where now it's much harder to deal with it. And if you're a zoner, you will probably corner yourself. So like, be aware of it. Be thinking about what you do. Like, don't let yourself be in a position where it's unbeatable.
Right.
That's my point. Right? Like,
Sure.
what your projectiles look like will determine what that's like. If you're Axel, cool. You have a spike that is a dust that just beats it because your dust is 2 to 5, 5, 2 with 4 guard. So just keep a copy of that around and don't let yourself get murdered by Crimson Barrage. You also have a bunch of other things that could beat it because you have range and everything, but
Sure.
other things might trade with it. Spike
And
beats it clean. Dust beats
and
it clean.
and zoners often will have stuff to be able to deal with it. It's just that the you outside of pretty rare circumstances, the upside that even a good zoner will get out of a good projectile is probably not as much as Vincent's going to get out of Crimson Barrage.
Yes, yeah. Specifically, you need to not trade with it. Like, don't let it hit you. Is my point.
Right. Sure.
And zoners are way more likely to be both cornered and at the range where Crimson Barrage hits. And is relatively sane as opposed to range 2 where it hits but is extremely risky because it's
Right.
a pay 2 force and hard counter cross in that situation. But yeah, like zoners are way more likely to leave themselves accidentally open to a Crimson Barrage trade that can ruin their lives. Other characters are not as likely to be open to it, but if they get pinned in it, then they just probably are completely out of options. Whereas zoners can be in range of it and still have tools as long as they're thinking about it in advance.
Right. Okay.
So yeah, don't let yourself lose that automatically. Important universal advice: you will lose to ballot fixing. That's the advice.
Yep. Yep. Lose
Accept it.
gracefully.
Yeah, lose gracefully. Vincent wants to manipulate you by making you do low commitment stuff and low tempo stuff so that he can buy more time and more turns to draw up, maintain his resources, play low risk stuff, or mitigate his losses until he can accumulate enough gauge to hit you with the blockbuster over there if you need survival. Accordingly, like what you want to do is to do low investment stuff at a high tempo. You don't want to play a lot of slow paced play for time because that's probably better for him for the previously mentioned reasons.
Sure.
And if at some point you just have to aggress into him in a way that is entirely unsafe against ballot fixing and you lose to it, okay, that's fine. You will lose to it. He only gets 4 copies. 4 is too many. Fact is, if you're fast enough, you might only get 2. Right. By copies, I mean how many times you can play it. He doesn't get 4 copies; he gets 2 copies. It's a reshuffle.
So rushing Vincent down pressures his resources, it also means that ideally you have fewer copies of ballot fixing to deal with.
Exactly. You
Okay.
know, in the miraculous chance that you can get through his life bar before he gets through his deck and sees all 4 of his ultras, that's really good for you.
Okay.
Um, and that would be correlated. If he gets through his deck and he sees all 4 ultras, it's going to be a lot harder to get through his life bar.
Right.
Yeah, Phoenix Revival is real nasty. It's you can often kind of make a tricky setup where it looks like he can make it safe and he's wrong. Find ways to dive over it. When you can't cross out of it, like it looks like you can't get out of it, but actually you can dive over it, and he wasn't thinking he would do that because it won't hit. So you're at range 1, that sort of thing.
Right.
You also might be able to throw, for example, EX Sweep, which has 7 power, and he will play this often. Well, if he initiates with it, and he may sometimes do that when he has little better to do, and it's an awesome thing, and he needs to not just die. Yeah, he'll often play it at 6 guard because 6 guard is safe against almost everything, but not EX Sweep. Any additional sources of power, by the way, are always going to be good for you because Vincent commits to trading a lot. So trading up just consistently is like improving your trades is going to be good for you generally. Like you're not likely to lose strikes clean except on the Gatling punch and the ballot fixing turns, and the bunker buster turn. When he has Ignore Guard in play, that's probably a strike that you lose. The way that you deal with it is you strike on curve, and this boost. That is itself risky because maybe you fall for, so don't assume you have to strike on curve, right? If you are too consistent at like, he plays that, we're at range 2, I play cross, you'll lose the game. Occasionally, you can just play spike and go, well, if he beats spike by ignoring my guard, it was spike. It was probably losing anyway. Like spike mostly loses to things that are faster than it.
Right. So it's a similar kind of tension to how you're dealing with ballot fixing, where you might be trying to lose to Bunker Buster with a low commitment enough option that is still sensible, that is still a good thing to play. Similar to ballot fixing, where like, well, I can't invest a million boosts into anything while ballot fixing is alive. I need to play some low commitment offense.
Mm-hmm.
So similar kind of threading the needle there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
Oh, okay.
If you have speed boosts, those tend to make it a little more awkward for him to filter things effectively. That's true of basically everybody, so it's not particularly special there. But he will tend to try to diffuse speed boost with ballot fixing if he has the gauge.
Yep. Makes
Oh
sense.
yeah, generally your best chance to aggress into him is before he gets to gauge. That might be obvious, but yeah, early game Vincent is not very strong. He is going to be reliant on the rushdown boost. Sorry, the boost called rushdown.
Right.
Because that's what sets up his early neutral to be really scary.
Makes sense. So he will be rushing to get to 2 gauge. You need to do as much damage as you can if you are trying to rush him down before that happens. That makes sense.
Mm.
Okay. All right. Any other counterplay notes?
He is not good at range 3. He plays normals and is mediocre at them. So he loves range 1 and 2, and he's super scary at those ranges. At range 3, he plays the normals game that everyone plays without a whole lot of fanfare to it, and he's reliant on making stuff a little better with his ability if he's going to do anything about it. So if you have if your specials or an ultras supplement range 3 at all, you have a better range 3 than him. So consider range 3.
Okay. All right. It may serve you
That's
well.
probably it.
Sounds good. Okay. So that's how you beat him. That's what he does. That's how the character works. Really quickly as we wrap up, as always, we've kind of talked about a couple similar characters to Vincent. We've talked about his family tree of
Mm-hmm.
Ramlethal, Ramulus, and Fight. Any other characters who kind of fill a similar play pattern to Vincent?
Let me think about that. So the reason that they're in his family tree, right, is because of the economic play, the resource play.
Yeah.
They actually often work very differently, and the way that their abilities interact, as you described, right, works very differently. Where their abilities can give them wins, and Vincent's doesn't. Right. Vincent gives him it turns a lose into a trade instead of a trade into a win. And yeah, because of that, oh man, there are some card shapes. They're very rare. There are some card shapes that have some similarities to ballot fixing, where it's something very silly, but yeah, the overall play patterns of this character. I should have thought more about this part in advance. Sorry.
That's all right. I mean, it sounds
Uh,
like he is a fairly other than his family tree, and even then, it sounds like he is a fairly unique character in Exceed. You might not be getting the exact same overall play experience with Vincent as you would from many other people. We mentioned Anji briefly as having kind of a similar like force a trade
mhm.
defensive mix-up character, but his
Yeah,
economic situation is very different.
yeah. His economy is totally different. I do think Anji is good at the half the Vincent promise, or I should say the Vincent promise that I really like, which is you determine what your opponent's doing, and you can sculpt something that beats it. You can carve out very specifically. This is what I need, so I have it.
Right.
Um, Anji has a very different pattern, I think, of when and how he does it, but he does do that, which is nice. Um, I as previously described, Rimless I think excels at that, where making defensive EXs is phenomenal at being able to beat your opponent by anticipating what they were able to do.
Right. I mean, saying you have an answer Vincent and you have an answer Remulus, I feel like I like that particular theme of the character shines through.
Hmm.
That's what you're trying to do with that character, sure.
Yep. Um, yeah, I run them quite similarly. And then if you like uh, Egyptian god cards, if you like big dumb ultras, a lot of season one is good for you.
Sure.
Trying to think, I feel like the only other character. All right, I can't vouch for this, but ultras that compares to ballot fixing
You get your shield boomerang?
is Shield Boomerang. I can't
Yeah.
play these characters. I'm not good with them.
Yeah, that is an all-timer of a card though.
Yeah, this is one of the only ultras in the game that I think compares with ballot fixing for being unbeatable.
Yeah.
Where
I had
depending on
speaking
yeah, the
of
word
season
state.
one ultras and good season one characters and good ultras. Yesterday I had a lesson on Mei Lian. Um
Oh boy,
and I don't there's nothing that says to me that Mei Lian and Vincent have particularly similar play patterns, but if you are looking for a good ultra, may I recommend Raijin Oath?
it's a good ultra.
Yeah, that's a
Um,
scary one.
yeah, it's one of the strongest ultras in the game, and that's a long list of ultras in the game.
Yeah,
But uh,
a stacked roster of ultras. Okay, so
yep,
I could be leveraging sort of the defensive mix-up style. I could be leveraging the economy to get something similar to Vincent, or I could just be looking for a really, really stupid card to play. But
hmm
none of these characters are going to have everything. So if I'm looking for Vincent, I'm probably looking for Vincent in particular.
uh, that would be my current assessment.
Okay.
Um, there's a little vintage that you can scratch from a lot of places, but I can't think of somebody who does all of this together. The resource interplay with the, in my opinion, pretty reads oriented gameplay, or at least reads rewarding gameplay.
Sure.
Um,
And I mean,
yeah,
normally the way that we theme this part of the lesson is, hey, if you play this character, you might like Vincent because they're similar. That actually is unique and special and interesting in its own way. That like odds are, people listening here, you have never played a character exactly like Vincent. That should, if you are
yeah,
interested in Exceed and Exceed design, that should be enticing. Maybe go give him a try.
yeah. He is likely to be the hardest character that you played. And if not, he's probably going to be in the top handful because I think he's in the top handful of the game as far as the difficulty of playing him. Um, but I also think he's a ton of fun and insanely rewarding because you know, I love my grapplers, and although I don't think of him as a grappler in general, he sure has two absurdly punishing, incredibly unsafe attacks.
Right.
Um, yeah,
Okay. Cool.
uh, yeah,
Yeah,
there you go.
I have definitely come away from this lesson a lot more interested to give Vincent a try. So thank you so much for that, and obviously for the information and all of that stuff, and the lesson and things like that.
My
Anything
pleasure.
else you wanted to mention before we wrap it up?
Um, I'm just gonna state on the record. I think Vincent has a one of the best matchups into Malian in season one. There we go.
Really? Oh man.
Hmm.
Okay. Um. It.
That's all.
All right.
No no further details here. That's
Yeah.
not what this
No.
movie.
So
That's not
all
what this
right.
is about.
Homework for folks watching this. Then go watch the Melian lesson that I did with Jay. Watch this lesson again and figure out why D says that, and then tell me. Let me cheat on the homework a little bit because I don't know, but I'd love to find out. All right. Well, Dee, thank you so much. This was been as always, it's been a blast. Really appreciate your time here. Thank you so much for
My
teaching me,
pleasure.
Vincent.
Yeah, thanks for
Um,
having me.
of course, of course. Folks at home, hope you enjoyed it. Hope you learned something. I will see you all for the next one. Goodbye, everybody.
Yeah, imagine what you learn tomorrow. Uh, oh, and stay hydrated.
Please do. Bye, everybody.